Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Hello and welcome back to a very, very special episode here on All for United. I'm joined by Tony. You probably know him as his Twitter handle there. I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but a very, very well-respected United historian, especially with the academy. And I think that's sort of giving away what this show is going to be all about. Obviously, a FA Youth Cup final tomorrow. Very, very exciting game for the whole Manchester United club, not just this individual team. So, Tony, first of all, fantastic having you on. How are you doing?
I'm good. How's looking forward to the game going?
Very good, very good. I'm actually going. That's even better. So, making a long trip up to Manchester to go and watch. So, hopefully, we get a good game. We'll start from the start, I suppose. How have Manchester United got here? It's been a long time since we've got to a final. Can you sort of give us a rundown of sort of the process that's led them to get into this FA Youth Cup final?
I think there's a number of things, James. I think, firstly, after Paul McGuinness left the club, there was a serious lack of investment across all junior levels, under 16s, under 18s, under 17s. And when Kieran McKenna took over, they decided, whoever was making the decisions, that it would be a good thing, if you like, to start to look at serious investment in the junior squad. And we've been doing that for decades. We've been doing that by going out with our scouting network and looking at the best kids in the area, the best kids on the block, best kids in the county, best kids in the country, etc., etc. And I think a couple of things were really interesting. I'm not utterly convinced, until recent times, that our scouting in Europe has been that great. I think that's changed recently. I think some of the quality of international youngsters coming into the club has made a big difference, and we can see that with quite a few of the names who people probably know. I think the other thing that's happened is we've got some real quality from local areas as well. KB Moon is from Stockport, Dan Gord the same, Charlie McNeil Manchester. There's a whole bunch, a real core of local lads in the team. It's really weird, actually. There's not. If you look at historical youth squads, you've got lads from the Northeast, lads from Liverpool, lads from London. We haven't really got that. What we've got is they're either Mancunian or there or thereabouts, or they're from abroad. And so I think the scouting has got better over the last 5 years, and that's now showing. I think the second thing is that, and I have to give credit, massive credit to the coaching staff. I think Travis Binion has done a tremendous job. He's not a name that everyone knows, particularly in the history of Man United. That he's not a particularly well-known name, but he's clearly doing a great job. And I think, the third thing is, doesn't matter how many good players you've got. We've had loads and loads of really quality players in previous squads. I think it's about the blend of the team. So in 2003, there weren't what I would call major stars, but the blend of the team was pretty exceptional. So you had top to bottom a really good team. And I think in 2011 it was pretty much the same. You had some standouts in that team like Popper and Morrison and one or two others, but it was a real team. And I think since then we've not had a team. And whether you want to say that's down to Binion and the coaching staff, I'm happy for you to say that. Whether it's the scouting, a bit of serendipity, whatever it is, I think what's happened is it's all just gelled at the right time. And the interesting thing with youth cup runs, more than anything else, it's about momentum. So if you go back in history, you win your first game, it can often be scrappy. And if you go back in history, we've had loads of scrappy third round, fourth round games. You get to the fifth and the sixth round, and you now, particularly if you're playing the same team, you start to build what we would know in first team level, same back four, same midfield. And that doesn't tend to happen in youth level. If you go to the under 18 games, you're chopping and changing all the time to give people development time. The Youth Cup, you tend to play your strongest team. And I think what Binion's got is he's suddenly got a group of players who have really gelled, those 18 players or so, have really gelled into a team. And I think that's the big difference.
Well, I just wanted to touch on the scouting thing again, because I think it's really interesting at the minute. You look at the players that are ready to break into the first team. You've got Anthony Elanga, who already has broken in. He's from Sweden. originally. You've got Hannibal from France, well, Tunisian, more specifically. Garnacho, who's about to break through from Argentina. Is it fair to say we're seeing United deviate away from looking for local lads, another sort of class of 92 of Manc born and bred sort of young stars? And if so, is this a good thing for the club, or do you think it could have a bit of a negative impact as well?
It's a good question, because on the surface, you're not really sure what's going on. But in actual fact, in previous years, we've had a real mixed match of people. I mean, you can name pretty much any year you want. And as I mentioned, you've got lads from Nottingham, or lads from London, or lads from, Shropshire or Birmingham. We don't have any of that. We've pretty much scouted, like I say, either locally, and Gore, Mather, Mainu, Norkett, Murray, Oidelli. I can name virtually all the squad. They're all local. Stockport, Manchester, maybe one or two Bury or somewhere, but they're all within our remit. And that's a real strong sense of connection with the club. And then you've got a handful of foreign players, Garnacho and Gerardo from Spain, Vitek from Eastern Europe. You've got, and obviously in the older age groups, you've got a few players as well. But in this core, you've really, the only real, I would say, not outsider, that's totally the wrong word, but the only person who I would say is not really, or the only two players not really from the area, would be Pai and Hugel from the Northeast, who we brought in a couple of years ago. And as a consequence, I think scouting has changed. I think it will change again. And certainly all the other clubs are doing exactly the same. And what you would tend to find historically is that England schoolboys would play, and all the lads that would play England schoolboys hadn't had an association with any club. So they were 14, 15 years old. And the Jimmy Murphys and the Johnny Astons and the likes, Joe Armstrongs of the likes, would go and Eric Harrison and all the scouts, Mick Brown, whatever, would go and look at these lads. And you had 5 or 6 clubs after them, Chelsea, Arsenal, whoever. And they would then choose who they wanted to join. When the academy system was introduced in '99, that all stopped. So what would happen? A London boy joined a London team. Because why? Because he was 8 or 9 years old. He wasn't going to join Manchester or Liverpool or Everton or whoever. He had to join a London club because it was in the 60-minute radius, the 90-minute radius. So all of a sudden, we stopped getting London boys. We stopped getting Newcastle boys. We stopped getting, lads from the, from Norfolk or from Suffolk or any of those areas. Or from the southwest. All of that stopped. So the strategy stopped. And by the way, the London clubs, they couldn't get lads from Newcastle and Norwich and North because it was out of their radius. So the David Beckhams who came to United at 15 years old, he in modern terms, he would never been anywhere near United. He would have been at Spurs or Arsenal or Chelsea, because his mum and dad would have only been able to take him within a certain radius of where he lived. So that changed the dynamic about bringing English players into the club. So what United have done pretty significantly is they've said, okay, and I think they've done it really well in recent times, is they've upped the scouting in the local network. And the local lads that we've got are just as good as any local lads that City have got, certainly. And if you go down the lower age groups, we're very comparable to City. What City do in terms of what we've done is I think their global reach in recent years has been a lot better. And they're getting the benefit of that. So they've won the under-18 league. They've won the under-23 league. I think that's going to change in the next 3 or 4 years. Brexit has stopped them bringing in lads from Europe, us as well, obviously. So they're not going to be able to bring in all these Spanish people that, Guardiola knows through all these contacts. That's going to stop. So they're going to have to start to look local. And so all of a sudden, it's going to get very competitive in the next 4 or 5 years. So I think the scouting has evolved. I don't think it's better or worse. I think it's evolved. I think what sometimes happens, and people don't realize, is when Ferguson left, and a lot of people left at the same time, it upsets things. It's like working for a big company, and you lose all these heads of departments, and you lose a whole bunch of senior people. And then all of a sudden, well, where's all the knowledge gone? So there was a lot of people left when Ferguson left. And so from 2013 onwards, I think that had an impact on our academy that a lot of people don't realize, because it filters down in terms of culture and profile and values and and all those types of things. And if you can imagine, we had 27, 28 years of Alex Ferguson meeting every single parent of every single scholar. Well, that's not happened because we've had 6, 7 managers. So, Mourinho certainly didn't do it. Moyes certainly didn't do it. Solskjaer did it as much as he could. I know he was visiting parents and stuff, but he only had a relatively short tenure. Van Gaal didn't do it. So all of a sudden, you're not getting that stability of top to middle to bottom. So, and that's changed. So I think what's going to happen, I don't know if you saw in the media recently, James, we've just signed a couple of African brothers, 14 years old, or they look about 20, but anyway, that's another story. Young African kids. And I think there's, I don't know whether it's going to be a strategic thing that we start doing or not. I have no idea. And it could be that we're going to have to look out with the concept of Brexit. We're going to have to look outside of Europe for young talent below the 18, because obviously with Brexit, we can't sign 16-year-olds anymore. We have to wait until they're 18. Well, they can turn professional at 17. And as a consequence, all the good players are going to be snapped up on contracts in their local area. So we won't get Gerardo and Garnacho and Fernandez and Hansen Aaron. They will all be professionally on professional contracts in Denmark or Norway or Sweden or Spain or France, wherever the case may be. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I think it's going to continue to evolve. I just hope. I don't know if anybody was listening to the Nick Cox podcast. He speaks really well, and I was listening to a lot of what he said when I listened to that over the last couple of days. I feel really confident that someone like Nick is in charge. He seems really to have his finger on a number of different pulses that relates to your question. But as with all these things, it takes 4, 5, and 6 years to reap the benefits.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's worth keeping an eye on for sure. But I wanted to, switch the focus back to the game tomorrow, because obviously the thing you hear a lot from youth coaches is, game to game, we don't really care about the result. It's more about instilling a way of playing, making sure the progression's coming along nicely. But how different is that in a game like this? In your experience, how important is winning this tournament to a club like Manchester United? Obviously, we've not won it in 11 years. That's sort of shown on the pitch as well. There's not been as many youth products coming through as there has been historically as well. So these players can get that first trophy under their belts. How important is that going to be for their development?
To answer the first question first, it's a real fine line between winning and development. And so my view is a very old view because of my age and my history and all the rest of it. And a modern coach might see it very differently. So a modern coach might answer that question by saying, of course, we'd like to win. And deep down, secretly, we'd love to win. But at the end of the day, I would rather lose and have 11 players reach the first team than win and have none of them. And I get that. Okay, I get that. On the other hand, and this is my opinion, I don't think, like in any walk of life, when you reach 17 years old, I don't think you can suddenly get into the first team like Garnacho is and then still have a development mindset. You've got to have a winning mindset because all the players around you are wanting to win that game. And they're not going to accept that you're there saying, well, it doesn't matter if we win or not. They're going, it bloody does. And it wins for a number of reasons. It wins altruistically because I want to be successful. It wins because the first team players have pride in their performance and they want to do the best they can. C, it's Manchester United, but also D, I get a bonus and I get, incremental income if we win games versus drawing or losing games. So if you're taking this as, I'm not that bothered about winning, it's all about my development, then you're impacting my success. And you know what? That's not what I'm on for. In reality, I think there's a balance between the two. And I think the Youth Cup is that balance. I think this is the balance where a lot of the coaches would say, the under-18 league, we've come 3rd or 4th in the league this year. We had a really good run. We've had some fantastic performances. Great. We'll blood players. We'll try different things out. And they have. They tried 4-4-2, 4-3-3, a back three with wing backs, loads of different formations. The FA Youth Cup is different. The FA Youth Cup, it's about both. It's about performance and development and about winning. Because when you win, you ask any player, I mean, I was talking to Lee Lawrence on Twitter over the last couple of days, and he still remembers back in 2003 winning this competition, and it mattered. I spoke to Norman Whiteside some time ago, and he still remembers the FA Youth Cup final against Watford and how important it was. And he was 16 years old, and so players will remember this as a pivotal point of their development, which links on to your second point. Winning this is an incredible springboard. I mean, when Matt Busby in the 50s with the Busby Babes, his philosophy was always, and he said it publicly, if you win the FA Youth Cup, every single one of those players will get a chance in the first team to prove that they're good enough. And he did that. And every single player who ever played in the FA Youth Cup had a chance in the first team. And I think that springboard still exists today. So we've seen Garnacho get a chance. We've seen one or two others get close to the bench. We've seen others, get involved in training. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the training thing. That's been going on for years and years, where youngsters come in to help the first team out with set pieces and exercises and what have you. But this is all great experience, and I think if we can get that balance right between development and winning, and I don't see there's a difference between the two really. I think that you get to a certain age, then fantastic. I would love us to win youth cups. I would love us to win under 18 leagues. I would love us to win competitions. The UEFA Youth League. I'd love us to win those things because of the confidence of winning that it gives. But again, it's about balance.
Well, I wanted to go back to that point on development, because I know there's a quote in the last year or so from John Murtough saying that he sees United as a team that will in the future play an attractive brand of football, an exciting brand of football, and that's going to start from the ground up. Now, we're not going to go into sort of a deep tactical dive on this team, but from what you've watched this season, are you encouraged with the way that these players are, the style that's being bed into them? Obviously, we just had that conversation about it's more about getting everyone on the same hymn sheet than winning games as such. But, from the performances you've seen, are you encouraged by the way that Manchester United look like they want to play football in the future?
I think so. Well, no, I don't think so. Having watched youth teams, I don't know, since I don't remember how long ago, and certainly following the youth team from the late 70s, we've always played attractive football at that level. Man United have always gone out there to win games. We've always gone out there to play in a certain style, even regardless of formation. We've always played an attractive style. We've always wanted to win games. And I think you see that, you've always seen it, but you see it now as well. We're 2-0 up, and our forwards will go into the net to get the ball and bring it back for the kickoff because they want a chance to score another goal. Whereas in senior football, you're 2-0 up, you let the opposition worry about their kickoff process. And at youth level, kids just want to play. And you can overcomplicate it. You can really overcomplicate it with all sorts of different things. But at the end of the day, it's 11 kids, 11 16-year-olds on a pitch, all wanting to win a game. They just happen to wear the shirt of Manchester United. And there's history in that, and there's culture in that, and there's legacy in that. And that will attract a lot of talent because they want to be part of something that has consistently delivered. So I think we've always played attractive football, bar the odd period of time where perhaps the youth football wasn't as exciting because of the caliber of players perhaps we had. And you kind of alluded to that with, there have been periods in our history where we haven't brought as many youth players as we would have liked. But as I've said before on this podcast and on Twitter and other areas, you look at any match day squad, we've still got 7 and 8 youth players in the team. The Pogbas and the Lingards, and I keep saying this to people, in McTominays and Rashfords and Alangas and recently Garnacho and Fernandez, and I say to McTominay, and I say to people, I don't care whether you like them or not. That's not the issue. The issue is not whether you like them or whether you like the way they play or whether they're your favorite player. I really don't care. The fact is they've come through our system and they've now got 100 and 200 and 300 games. And you can say, yeah, but I don't like them. That's your prerogative to not like them. It really is. But that's nothing to do with the fact that, Jesse Lingard scored the winning goal in the 2016 FA Cup final. You can hate him till the world comes home. He still came through our youth system and helped us collect a trophy. And Paul Pogba scored a goal in the 2017 UEFA, Europa League. And he came through our youth system and he scored a goal in the winning cup final. And you can hate on him if you want. I really don't care. So don't confuse whether I like players to whether in comparison the youth system is working, because it's still working. The fact that the team isn't performing, and so therefore some of the youth players become easy targets, because some of the the numbnuts on Twitter would rather we spend £100 million on some idiot from some player no one's ever heard of from I don't know what team, and they don't. They see Anthony Elanga, or they see who's still developing as an 18-year-old kid, or Marcus Rashford going through an incredibly poor period in his career, and it's easy to get on the bandwagon and criticize those players and say they're not good enough, and forget the fact that they're still good players. They've still come through the system and they're still contributing. Not maybe today, because the whole team's not contributing. So I think it's I think you have to be careful with making a lot of comparisons, because the context is different. I mean, I've just seen Brendan Chappell in the chat box talk about ours compared to Ajax. I think it's a great question, right? Because Ajax is probably, I don't know all the detail about South American clubs and their history, and Eastern Europe is really hard to get records, although Red Star Belgrade and Partizan Belgrade have got pretty good youth history as well. But in terms of Ajax are probably the closest to us in terms of youth philosophy and culture. The challenge is, if you look at who Ajax play every week and take the top 3 or 4 clubs out of the equation, they're not playing anyone. They're not playing anyone at all. So the caliber to be an Ajax youth system is not the same caliber to be a Manchester United's youth system. I want to be really clear on that. Manchester United, up until recently, and let's not get into the first team's results in a very, very poor, disappointing season. But, to be a Manchester United footballer, you've got to be the top of the top. And until recent times, that might have been the top 5 players in the world. So to be the top 5 players in the world, Ajax aren't doing that. You don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing Ajax's youth system. They've got some wonderful players, and so have we. All I'm saying is, to play in Ajax's youth system in their first team is a lot easier than playing in Manchester United's first team, and City's and Liverpool's and Chelsea's, because they're at the same level in terms of caliber. Performance is different. So as a consequence, Ajax and United are very, very similar, but I think it's irrelevant. I don't think it's fair to compare them because of the level. Now, you compare Bayern Munich youth system to ours, that's a fair comparison. Why? Because we're trying to get that caliber of kid into the first team to compete at that level. Compare us to Real Madrid's, to Barcelona's, to Man City's. I think they're fair comparisons, because the type of player we need needs to be that good. But I'm not sure about Ajax.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to look at anyway. But I want to talk about the individuals more, just because obviously not everyone watching this game will have an in-depth knowledge of every academy player, and that's absolutely fine. But I just want to get your opinion on who we should really be looking out for. Who is going to be the difference maker in this FA Youth Cup final? Obviously, we have the obvious names that we all know and that are floating around the first team now. But from your experience, who do we need to look out for that maybe people haven't heard of very much before?
Well, good question, James. I think the names people have probably been talking a lot about, and I'm going to name 2 or 3. The names that people probably already know would be Kobe Mainu, who's had a cracking season for the 18s, jumped into the 23s, very strong physical lad. And he's probably plays at number 6 for us. People would have seen him play, heard of him. He's getting a lot of publicity. Another lad is Charlie McNeil. We got him from City a couple of seasons ago after he left United to go to City. He's been scoring a lot of goals. He broke the goal scoring record for our under 18s at academy level, not youth level, but academy level a couple of seasons ago. He's scoring for fun. He's scored quite a few goals in the youth team. I think he's scored in every round except the game against Leicester City. So he's a name that most people know. He needs to fill out a bit. A lot of people are talking about him as, potential first team. He's still learning. He's still a very slight lad. Clearly got the talent, as many of these players have, but he still needs to needs to pull out. The one that most people probably be familiar with because they've seen him in the first team is Alejandro Garnacho. He was born in Spain, but he qualifies for Argentina through parentage, as you mentioned. So a lot of people would have seen him on Twitter or other social media being recognised at international level for Argentina, not getting a game, but being in the squad with Messi and so forth. But a couple of others to watch out for. There's a young midfielder called Daniel Gore, a local guy, local kid, quite diminutive in terms of size and all the rest of it, but he kind of makes the team tick. He's quite aggressive in the tackle. He's very, very attacking minded, but he can defend really well as well. He's got a great engine. And why he doesn't have the physicality in the same way as Mainu, he's got aggressive. And he really reminds me of a young Nicky Butt, who's kind of quite aggressive, not huge, but demands the ball. He's definitely got skill. And he can pop up with a goal here and there as well. And he kind of makes the team gel a little bit in a way that the others do as well, of course, but he just brings something else to the game. So tomorrow night, I expect him to start, and I'd expect him to have a great game. He would relish the opportunity, I think. Another player that people might have heard of who's gone a little bit under the radar recently is Hansen Aron, the young Scandinavian boy. He's really slight, but he's got great balance. He's very creative, very good passer of the ball. He plays in the kind of 10 role, just off Charlie McNeil. And so he has done really, really well. And I'm not mentioning any defenders because it's really hard when you're trying to win games at youth level. The defenders kind of get missed, and they've all done really well. But I think Tyler Fredrickson has surprised a lot of people. He wasn't a name on everyone's lips at the beginning of the season. A lot of people wouldn't have heard of him, wouldn't have known who he was. Another local boy, and very composed. Next to the captain, Reece Bennett, very composed, good on the ball. Doesn't make. I hate saying this, James. You're bigging players up, and then you're just hoping that they don't make a mistake tomorrow night or something, because then it goes pear-shaped. But very composed. He's very consistent, and he's one to watch out for. So there's 2 or 3 names that, as people watch the game tomorrow, either live or on TV, just be curious about. Be really curious what everyone else's thoughts are.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, not to put too much pressure on them, but keep an eye out for him in the first team as well. Give him 5 years or so.
I think what's going to be interesting is the last game of the season against Palace. I'm just wondering, is there really anything to lose with giving some of these kids, not the youth players necessarily, but some of the under 23s, giving them a chance? I think it'll be interesting to see if Rangnick in his last game does that. Because I don't know if you saw in media, he's got a bit of criticism by playing some players and not others. I'm not sure he cares, but he's got a little bit of criticism, and I'm just wondering whether he'll just, he's not asked, he'll just throw a few kids in.
Yeah, you'd hope so. I think there's been a lot of outcry for it, hasn't there? But It'll certainly be interesting. But I wanted to quickly touch on, because obviously I think it's worth mentioning the opposition. Now, you think of dominant forces in youth football, you think of your Chelsea's, your Man City, sorry. Nottingham Forest probably isn't a name that would come to mind, but obviously they've beaten Chelsea in the last round in a very dramatic fashion. How much of a test are they going to put up against United, and how important is it that our fans don't assume that this is a foregone conclusion before the game's even started?
You've hit the nail on the head. We've got to be really careful, and I'm sure the coaches have said all this. They've got to be really careful against complacency. If this was a City or a Liverpool or Aston Villa, they won the league, they won the FA Youth Cup last year, or Chelsea, as you've mentioned, or even Arsenal, there's huge youth pedigree in those teams. And so there's an element of raising your game against a Chelsea or a City or whatever. And Nottingham Forest have gone under the radar. They're pretty much equal to us in the under-18 league. So they're at our level in terms of winning games and having a quality team. They're managed by Warren Joyce, who United fans know very well from being our under-23 manager for many, many years, and winning quite a few titles with our reserves and under-23s or under-21s. So Warren Joyce is a seriously good coach, and he will have the Nottingham Forest team well organised. They will play really good football. They will be disciplined, and you're absolutely right. That tomorrow will be one hell of a game. I'm not going to predict what's going to happen because at youth football you just can't do that. But we should never estimate a team such as Forest with the teams they've beaten on the route to the final, and the fact that they've got Warren Joyce as their manager. These are not a pushover or a walkover.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, the final point I want to touch on before I let you go is, we have to mention the scale of this game. I think it's officially sold out today. We heard around 65,000 tickets have been sold. Now, I'll ask you this question in two parts. I suppose part one is, for you, having such a passion in the academy, how much does this mean to you that the fan base have rallied so heavily around this youth team? And then the second part of it would be, how important is it going to be to these players to play in front of a packed out Old Trafford for the first time?
I think the first question first. I mean, we've always had big crowds at United watching youth teams. I mean, I think there's about 25 occasions where we've had 20,000 people or not, watching our youth team. So, and I'm not talking recently. I'm talking through the years. So, our players are used to playing in front of 20, 25, 30, 35,000. In 2010-11 in the against Sheffield United, there was 30,000 people at Old Trafford watching that game. I know it's not the same scale, but it's still a huge number. Back in 2007, there was 38,000, which was the previous record, away at Arsenal, and we beat Arsenal in the semi-final. You need to go back, some further periods to get other big rounds, but I think and even the class 92 played in front of 30,000 people. So we've always had big crowds. I think 30,000 for a youth game is a big crowd. I was thinking about this earlier, James, and I am totally fascinated about why this has happened. I don't know why. It's always been, the finals have always been at Old Trafford. The finals have always been midweek. So what is it? Is it because the first team are doing so poorly and people are just wanting some hope or some form of inspiration, and they see that they can get it from the youth team? I don't know. Was it the club getting it right for a change in terms of supporting the youth team? They've had a terrible record this year of not letting fans watch and only opening certain sections of the stadium and so forth. And on this occasion, they've got it right. They've connected it with the foundation. People are paying £1. The money's going to charity. Bring your kids. Open up the whole stadium, and all of a sudden, surprise, you've sold 60 or 70,000 tickets. So it's really bizarre, and it took me by surprise because I certainly didn't expect it. In terms of your second question, and by the way, am I happy about that? Yeah, I suppose so. I don't tend to get too concerned with how big a crowd is. What I would rather is I'd rather that kind of support the youth team when it's not a final, if you know what I mean. Is you always see these FA Cup finals when Wigan reach the final and every single person in Wigan wants a ticket to the FA Cup final, and they get 50,000 fans there, and then the next season or the season after they're in Division 2 or 3 and they're getting 5,000 people every week. And I think, well, where were those people a couple of years later? So football's like that. So I hope that a lot of these 70,000, I really hope that this is not a one-off, that they continue. I'm glad they're bringing the kids. I mean, that's how we get kids into the game, is to bring them to these types of games. In terms of the second question, it can go either way. It can either, I remember back in 1993, the FA Youth Cup team played brilliantly. It was a really good team, and they went to Leeds in the final, and there was 30-odd thousand people there. There was 31,000 or something, and the atmosphere was really electric, as you can imagine it would be at Leeds. And I think it affected a lot of the players, and we didn't perform on the night, and that was really interesting. I'm not sure that's going to happen this time. I think the 70,000 are majority of United fans. They're going to be pretty supportive. I hope they're supportive. These are young kids. They're still learning. They're going to make mistakes. So I hope they get behind them. And I think the players will cope. I think they're Manchester United players. They're used to playing in front of crowds. They're used to the pressure. They're coached about the correct pressure. They're coached about the history. I'm not sure. I think most of them, if not all of them, are just totally excited, totally motivated. They want to put on a performance. Whether we get it or not is a different conversation. I think they'll revel in it. I really do. I think it's the best thing that can happen to them in their careers. Because if they can't handle it in front of Old Trafford, in front of 70,000 for a youth game, they're not going to handle it in a first team game.
Absolutely. Well, it definitely promises to be an exciting prospect. If you have got a ticket, make sure you go down 100%. But Tony, we'll bring an end to things there. A massive thank you for joining me. It's been brilliant to talk to you. I hope everyone who's tuned in enjoyed it. I certainly did, put it that way. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll have hopefully more content the day after, reviewing this game as well, hoping for a Manchester United win, hoping for a new class of 92, but you don't want to put too much pressure on things. But Absolutely. As I said, you can find Tony's Twitter just next to his face cam. Very much recommend going and checking that out. But yeah, with that being said, we'll see you next time.